Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for watching This Is Now. Let's get right to today's headlines. While recent rains have lessened drought in Hawaii temporarily, nearly half of the state's population currently lives in drought areas. Now, we just got an update on the situation from a media briefing hosted by the State Land Department. That's today's Talker Story.
So while recent rainfall has provided some benefit to Kauai and Oahu, there's large portions of leeward and interior Big Island, Maui County, and Oahu that right now are under moderate to even extreme drought conditions. And we're really early in the dry season right now. Now, current projections are calling for rainfall to be below normal as we head into those hotter and drier summer months. And what that means is that the drought is likely to worsen and also expand to additional areas and islands. And these dry conditions, they're expected to continue into October and possibly into November. And what that means is that the fire season, which peaks usually in the middle of summer, could last into what is normally the beginning of the wet season.
We've actually had several fires already, from the arson fires on Maui to some unattended campfires on Oahu. Our county and state and federal agencies have been quite busy responding. And even though we're in the drought period right now, fire season for Hawaii is now year-round. We have fires that begin in January from lightning strikes on Hawaii Island, and over 90% of the fires that occur in the state of Hawaii are human-caused. So fires can occur at any time these days as long as the conditions are there for it. And while state and county agencies have their own jurisdictions, we often share our initial attack and fire suppression activities, and we call upon each other when needed. Most people are really concerned about wildfires impacting communities, homes, and lives, but we also want to let folks know that wildfires really impact our natural ecosystems here in the state. We have around a quarter of our state lands are covered in fire-prone grasses and shrubs. And when those grasses burn, they can burn up into our forests and our forested watersheds. And when those fires rip through those areas, they convert those forests to grasslands. And unlike a lot of other parts of the world, our native ecosystems here, when they burn, particularly our forests, they don't regenerate in response to the fire.
The Kona Kailua district of Hawaii Island, the west side of Molokai, and a portion of West Maui are currently classified as being in extreme drought conditions by the U.S. Drought Monitor. Drought and wildland fires are linked, and the drier vegetation gets even worse in the summer months, the greater the chances of wildland fires. Increasing drought severity often leads to hotter and faster burning fires. Here's more from officials.
We're in hurricane season right now, June 1st through November 31st. And similarly, we want the public to be prepared for wildfires also. With hurricanes come big winds. Wildland fires tend to run a lot faster in high winds. What can you do to prepare your home? First of all, if possible, cut 10-foot or bigger fire break and have all the cuttings in your grass, from your grass, your trees, put them in your green bins. Let's get rid of them. Your rain gutters should also be clear of debris. Also your roofs. If cooking outside, try to avoid cooking near your home, at least 10 feet away from any building. Also, try avoid using woods like kiave or mesquite. They throw embers from your grill and could possibly start a brush fire or a house fire.
Look for more on this severe weather situation coming up on later editions of HNN. New at noon, President Biden signed a series of bipartisan bills to improve care for veterans. Natalie Brand has more from D.C.
CBS News spoke with Marine veteran Dr. Kate Hendricks Thomas less than 6 months before she lost her battle with stage 4 breast cancer, leaving behind her young son Matthew and her husband Shane.
The radiologist said it looked like I'd been dipped in something.
Hendricks Thomas learned of her diagnosis at age 38, more than a decade after returning home from Iraq, where she was exposed to toxic burn pits on base. Fellow Marine veteran Mindy Beyer has been closely tracking legislation named in her friend's honor, requiring the Department of Veterans Affairs to provide mammograms for those who served near burn pits or had other toxic exposures, regardless of symptoms, age, or family history.
We hope that the message is getting out to veterans. If you have been serving, even if you weren't around burn pits, there's a possibility you were around some sort of toxic exposure. Please go earlier. Please check yourself out.
The legislation is one of 9 bills for veterans the president signed into law Tuesday.
Because veterans are the backbone, the spine of who we are as a country. We owe them. We owe them big.
This signing ceremony comes with pressure on Capitol Hill to still pass legislation to help an estimated 3.5 million veterans exposed to toxins in more recent conflicts. It took Hendricks Thomas 3 years to get her claim approved after it was initially denied.
Kate was very proud to serve her country, and I think that her message would always be fight for your country, but then fight for each other when you get back.
It's a message advocates hope senators hear when they take a final vote on burn pit legislation expected later this week. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
Today on Sunrise, Grace spoke with Senator Mazie Hirono about a number of developing issues in our nation's capital. Here's some of that interview.
I wanted to start off by asking, you're on a committee. It's holding a hearing today about the domestic terror threat. What is that about?
Well, the fact that these ideologically motivated shootings are occurring far, far too frequently in our country. And there was a hearing to focus on, from the 5 witnesses, what their thoughts were about what is happening in our country. But one thing I can tell you, Grace, that was really important to me is that all of the witnesses acknowledged that our country makes it far too easy to get guns.
Senator, I wanted to ask you, I know that you are in support of more gun control, but because of the way Congress is structured right now, it doesn't seem like anything is going to change. Do you see any hope of being able to do something on a federal level to reduce these mass shootings that we're seeing?
Even as we speak, there is a group of senators led on the Democratic side by Chris Murphy talking about how we can enact some form of gun safety legislation. It is really important that if we're going to propose these kinds of bills, that we need to pass them. And yes, I agree that in order for that to happen, we need a people here, elected people who share our views that we make it far too easy to get guns. And I did mention at the hearing today that Hawaii has some of the strictest safety laws, and that we have among the lowest, if not the lowest, gun violence incidents in our state. And so there is a causal connection there.
Senator, what do you say to constituents out there who, I think there's frustration because we see this deadlocked Congress, and it's almost forcing states to make their own laws, like the New York governor did with the recent restrictions for on guns with the minimum age. Is it going to be up to the states to do this because we can't depend on Congress?
I think it's important for Congress to act, but if Congress doesn't act, then yes, then the states should act. On the other hand, if you don't have national legislation, you can transport a gun from one state where it's easy to get guns to another state. And so I think federal legislation is very much required. And yes, there is frustration. One of the testifiers had lost his mother in New York, and he talked about what a wonderful person his mother was, and that it is up to Congress to do our jobs, to do what we can to prevent these kinds of shootings. And there are a lot of complicating factors, of course, but nonetheless, I think that enacting gun safety legislation is a very important aspect of what we need to be doing.
We know that a House Democrat is proposing a 1,000% tax on semi-automatic weapons. Would you go so far as to support something like that?
I would like to eliminate the ability to get semi-automatic weapons to begin with. So putting a fine on there, if that prevents people from getting their hands on these weapons, these military weapons, sure. But really, Grace, the issue here is that do we have enough members of both the House and the Senate who will enact gun safety legislation that will help make a difference? And right now in the Senate, we do not have 60 votes for those kinds of propositions, but we have to keep pushing. I think it is really important to not only propose a legislation that can get the 60 votes we need. If not, again, I would urge that we get rid of the filibuster so we can get things done by majority vote.
The Supreme Court is expected to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's something that we know that you oppose, but is there merit just to letting states again make decisions on laws for reproductive rights for women?
The question for all of us should be, who gets to decide on the issue of whether to have a child? Is it the woman, or is it a bunch of basically Republican legislators? I would say it's the woman. And that is why this kind of decision to control our own bodies is a fundamental right, which apparently the Supreme Court does not agree, even though it was a fundamental constitutional right for almost 50 years. We have a very right-wing Supreme Court that is prepared to overturn these kinds of laws. So yes, that means that it's, again, going to rely on the states. And thankfully, Hawaii is one of the states that protects a woman's right to choose. However, we know that if Republicans gain control of the House and the Senate, that they will push for national legislation that will eliminate this choice for women. And it will be government telling women what we can do with our bodies.
Senator, I know you were recently back home. What were you able to learn and accomplish while you were here?
I was particularly interested in the kind of help that the federal government provided. So, for example, on Maui, a highway on West Maui is going to be realigned with the infrastructure money that was provided. I also talked with the Planned Parenthood people who are, of course, very concerned about the demise of Roe v. Wade. I also talked with child care providers who talked to me about how hard it is to get accessible and affordable child care, which is one of the reasons that is such a major provision of Build Back Better. I also talked with a restaurant owner who was very much helped by the restaurant rescue plan that we enacted. So it was all about what the federal government can continue to do to meet the needs of our communities.
All 4 county mayors are joining forces to oppose a controversial bill to change up Hawaii's bail system. The bill would allow certain suspects in nonviolent crimes to be released without posting bail. The mayors, along with top officials from HPD and the police union, will be holding a press conference tomorrow to urge Governor Ige to veto it. They say this bill, quote, undoubtedly ignores public safety and emboldens criminals. The measure was designed to reduce overcrowding and make the system fairer to the poor. But after all the recent backlash, even the bill's sponsor, State Representative Scott Matayoshi, is calling for a veto, saying the bill is too broad. Governor Ige has until July 12th to issue his vetoes. Americans are starting to launch their summer vacations, and many are facing flight cancellations. CBS News' senior travel editor Peter Greenberg looks at the possibility of more travel meltdowns continuing.
Well, more of what happened last Memorial Day weekend. We're still in an infrastructure that can't handle the load, whether it's airlines, airports, or just staffing. Before, the airlines claimed it was a weather issue, then they claimed it was staff shortages. Then they tried to cut the number of flights. That didn't work. Then they tried to cut the number of routes. Earlier this week, American Airlines actually grounded 100 planes and then admitted they didn't have the pilots to fly those planes. So expect more crowded skies, at least in terms of the people on your plane, fewer flights, and higher fares. It's always a good idea to get the first flight of the day, but if you're not based in a major airport hub, ask the airline, is the plane assigned to your flight? Is that overnighting at that airport the night before? Because if the answer is yes, then there's a very good chance that the crew has stayed with that plane and they'll go out the next morning with you. That's one thing you want to do to give yourself at least a fighting chance.
A fighter jet that made a hard landing at the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport has been removed. It crash landed on runway 4R at around 2:45 yesterday afternoon. There were no injuries. Taiwanese media says the F-16A fighter Falcon came from Arizona, but it actually belongs to the Taiwan Air Force. The State Department of Transportation said the broken nose landing gear made it difficult to remove, but crews were able to complete the job just before 10 last night. Now to the pandemic, we got an update on how our hospitals are faring. Here's Hilton Rathel. He's the CEO of the Healthcare Association of Hawaii.
There is a very high rate of infection in the community right now, and that is showing up in our patients. And so you can be COVID positive and asymptomatic, and that is occurring in a number of these cases. So people are coming into hospital for a surgery or maybe for childbirth or some other reason. We're testing every patient who's admitted to our hospitals and discovering that some of the patients who are being admitted for other reasons are COVID positive. And that's been going on actually for the last quite a few months. We have about 200 patients in our hospitals who have tested positive across the state. Of the 200 that are COVID positive, approximately 50% of those are incidental cases. In other words, they came in a hospital for some other reason, they were tested and found to be positive. So they're not being treated for active COVID. But we are treating about 100 patients for COVID right now in our hospitals. And as of yesterday, we had 17 COVID patients in our ICUs across the state. And again, a number of those 17 COVID patients in our ICU are also incidental cases.
All right, it's Aloha Tuesday. Let's get a check on your forecast with Guy Hagi.
Sun getting higher in the sky. Temperatures warming up rather quickly. Take a look at the numbers right now. 77 already in Honolulu, Kahului, and down in Kona. On our way to near 90 today. A little cooler over in Lihue and over in Hilos. They're still at 69 degrees. Now, yesterday, it was a scorcher, right? Look at Kahului. They got to 90. You know it felt even warmer probably out in Wailea and over in Lahaina. 88 degrees in Honolulu. We didn't break or tie any records. However, there's a chance that that happens because today we'll see lots of sunshine. We won't see much in the way of cloud cover for windward areas, and there won't be much rain. And those winds, savor them today because they'll be running at nice speeds, 15 to 20, easing up tonight, running slow for the next couple of days.
Now let's see what the internet is talking about. Listen to this story of lost love. 70 years ago, an Iowa farm boy met a young Japanese woman in Japan during the Korean War. Dwayne Mann and Peggy Yamaguchi loved dancing and they fell in love and they planned to marry, and there was even a baby on the way. But their dreams were shattered when Dwayne was shipped back to the United States. He promised to send for Peggy, but family hardship turned to heartache when he found his dad had spent all his savings and his mom was burning Peggy's letters. Also, Peggy lost the baby. The loss haunted Dwayne, but he never lost hope he'd find Peggy and explain. Thanks to their children and journalists from all over the world, he finally got this chance 70 years later. They're both 91 years old now. They married others and had their own children, but Dwayne finally got to say the words he's been waiting to say to Peggy. He said, quote, "I didn't abandon you at all. I just couldn't find you." All right, time for some good news now. The Hawaii Adaptive Surfing Championships are happening this week at Kuhio Beach. That's where we find our Casey Lund.
Aloha, it's going to be a beautiful day here in Waikiki. We're at Kuhio Beach, and today is special because before the competition gets going on Wednesday, there's going to be a beach cleanup here and then a welcome ceremony at the Duke Kahanamoku statue at 4:30. And then, of course, Wednesday is when the competition gets underway. I want to talk with Kara Short. She is one of the co-founders of Access Surf Hawaii, executive director. Tell me a little bit about this week. You know, we've been on pause for a couple of years because of the pandemic. But that aside, this is a huge year, right?
It really is. It's as you said, we haven't done it for a couple of years, and we're the first stop of the first ever inaugural World Tour, Adaptive Surfing World Tour. So it's very, very exciting for us.
So I know we've been adding to the women's division since over the last few years, adding events, adding a Wounded Warriors division as well. So more than 100 different athletes from several different countries. But you know what I have just noticed just in the time I've been here for the next few hours? Hugs, community and warmth. This is a really, really special event, not just because of the competition.
That's what we always describe it, and that's what everyone talks about. They want to come to these events, and especially here in Hawaii, because of the community. And we've always heard people refer to themselves as the tribe is coming back together, and that's exactly what it is. And everyone's here to share. You know, like, how do you get in and out of the water? What do you do with your equipment? I mean, of course, as we said earlier, once the buzzer hits, that friendship goes aside for that 20 minutes, but when they're on the beach, it's hugs and love for sure.
Hey, talking about community and equipment, and it's unfortunate we have to bring this up, but we do want to mention, just in the hope that it can get returned to them. We covered that one of your athletes had their specialized board stolen, right?
That's right. Spike Kane, well, he lives in the States, but he's a surfer from England. He has a customized board. It's called a prone surfing board that an able-bodied surfer can't surf. So it's specifically for him. So we're just asking if anyone does know where it is, just bring it, no questions asked. He just really needs that piece of equipment specifically so he can surf and compete.
Yeah, because those are all, you know, the innovation, that's the other thing that I think is so cool about this. Everybody's adaptive boards are made just for them, and so a lot of innovation. So if you do know of that, please find a way to help get it right back, as she said, no questions asked. We want to give you the details on the competition. Starting tomorrow, it goes through Friday. The times are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, that can vary depending on conditions and surf and things like that. But the finals, the championship finals, happening Saturday, 8 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon. All the details online at hawaiinewsnow.com if you miss any of that, and Access Surf's website. So if you or someone you know might be able to take advantage of what they do some amazing work in our community, really, and throughout the world, bringing this now onto the international stage. For now, we'll send things back to you in studio.
Thank you so much for watching. This is Now on your Aloha Tuesday. We'll have the very latest coming up on First at 4, and of course you can get all the up-to-date headlines on all your H&N digital platforms.